Today I want to talk to you about the three action queries that I use most frequently: the append query, the delete query, and the make table query. These queries are literally workhorses when I'm manipulating data and turning it from raw data into information. At twice a year, when we start planning for the next year in finance, or when we're done with our planning and we want to move that plan data into the main set of data to use for the year, those two times of year, we need to make sure that both of the hierarchies, both in that planning data and in what we call the standard data, that they match. And that they, when they match, then we can reload the data and get it stood up for the next year. But you'll see that there are quite a few queries here that I have to use in order to prepare the data for use. Now, you'll notice that this one up here, if I go to Design View and bring it up, you'll see that for our Boeing commercial airplanes, we take this data in a table called Issues to Resolve. And what we want to do here is we want to tweeze out the BCA data in particular. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close this. So what happens when I create the analysis data tables is, in creating those analysis data tables, I actually create a situation where a lot of comparisons are done. And so when we come over here, the business plan parent versus the standard parent, if they're different, I say needs fixing. Okay? So when I already compared these data sets, it already says needs fixing in that data set. So I'm going to query with a fairly advanced query here. It's going to be BCA data. It's going to need fixing in the parent node, or it's going to need fixing in the what they call a subscription, and it needs the standard data file here. So true is an and to needs fixing, and also an and to like BCA. So BCA needs fixing, and this particular element here is true. And then we go down here, and I need that same information for this reporting application subscription, and so forth and so on. So I have a very advanced query that tweezes out as much as I can that's related to BCA. This one is a make table query. So when I first started off, I make a table with this data. The second pass through, I'm going to append this data to the table. So I will be tweezing out data related to these same fields in my next queries. And so we'll look at this one now, okay? And this one now appends to that same table that we did the make table. So if I click on append, mismatched items for BCA, and I cancel that. If I go back to this one, my make table query is putting data in mismatch items BCA. So what it's looking for is data that is a mismatch, needs fixing, and such. I'm going to go here, and here it's going to start appending to the same fields that I made in my first query, and it's going to look at this hierarchy now. Okay, so the first one looked at hierarchies that said BCA in the front. This one is now looking at a whole different set of hierarchies that happen to be labeled, that hierarchy is labeled major model. And the difference between all these is we're just looking at different hierarchies. So that's a couple workhorse queries there, okay? And I don't want to save that. Okay, so let's come down here. Notice that I have a lot of delete queries as well. And here it's business plan data. Now, one thing that I showed you at the beginning, that there was nearly 500,000 records in that. I really don't want to store that forever. In fact, every day that I run this, I'm going to run it with a different set of data. So during that period of time where we need to sync up these two data sets, what happens during that time is I pull brand new data, and then I I sift through it and find the anomalies in it, and I send it out to various business focals who go and look and investigate each one of those differences to make sure that they can make them match. And as they make them match, I find less and less problems until we drive all those problems down to zero. So at the very beginning, I want those data sets to be empty. So actually what happens is when I purge this, and these are cleanup ones here, when I purge those two big data sets, I do so when I close. So underneath this button, I clean everything up. And then after that macro runs that cleans up these two data sets, I then do a compact on the database so it stays as small as possible on the hard drive that I have to store the data. And so there's a view of why in a business sense you would use a make table query, an append query, and a delete query. So with those three queries, those are my workhorse queries. Those are the queries that I use when I really, really need to manipulate a lot of data. Sometimes you have to manipulate a lot of data in order to get to the end point and to get really to the bottom line. Now, out of those 500,000 records for each one of those, I'm comparing the two sets, beginning with the one comparing to the other. And once I compare both of those data sets, I only come up with the anomalies. Sometimes I'm only coming up with 5 or 10 records for a particular business unit. And if, that's all I get out of all the differences that could happen between this 500,000 and that 500,000. So you can see that I end up culling the data down to a very unique set of data by the time it's all done. And it's incredibly helpful to the business to be able to see what the differences are really easily, dive into those, change those, and then it makes the process go quite well. So if you liked what you saw here in this video, please hit the like button. And please, if you see the value in this channel, hit the subscribe button, and we'll hope to see you again later. Thanks.